myself to cough after that to see if I still had any blood, and it was not a concerning amount, but
That's good.
around, I couldn't quite muster my voice. All that came out was noise. Yet still I tried to stay around on the ever-shifting ground that was my world.
Welcome to the Folk Hogan podcast.
My best at trying
Ooh. Folk Hogan is a band from Salt Lake City, Utah. And that's us.
it's true.
We're 3/5 of a Folk Hogan.
That's true.
Right.
It's
How are you?
I've been there. I'm doing all right.
Casey,
How are you, Chips?
Moses?
Oh, Casey, how are
Moses, Casey.
I'm hanging in there, man.
you? Yeah.
I'm like that cat hanging from the tree. It's
Yeah.
like,
Hang
I'm
in
gonna
there,
fucking
catty.
hang in there and dig my claws
Kitty
into this
catty.
tree branch.
Kitty, kitty, cat.
You just got to do what you can.
That's all I can do.
You know.
We're just gonna talk about music gear today.
Okay.
Oof.
We're gonna talk about what we used to use and how
Okay,
that
so
evolved
this whole episode is just going to be the story of Nick's pedal boards.
today. Just about could be.
Yeah. Oh Lord.
And how your Kemper rack almost broke Seb's back last week because he's a dumb.
Seb almost broke Seb's
What
back
happened?
with the Kemper.
He's a dumb.
He
He lifted it up on that 1 foot stage at
not
Bar
just
named
that,
Sue
he
by himself.
took it out of the van by himself on
I
that
didn't know that.
inclined hill. That's what he did. Which I rolled it over and I was like, let me get it. Let me give you a hand with this. And he's like, nope, I got it. And he just grabbed it and pulled it away. And I was like,
Yeah.
Who are
Don't
you
do
trying
that.
to impress, Seb?
And then he-
The
then he
rack
hurt the whole
itself
show.
isn't heavy, but it's not
No.
like to be discounted.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing about it is
But
it's like,
and then it's full of microphones.
well, and
That's
you
the
reach
problem.
for the handles and it's kind of out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're not careful, it's going to throw
could-
anyone's back out.
You can tweak yourself on
Yeah.
it.
yeah.
That's why you have two people, Seb.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably 50 pounds
Yeah.
all together.
Pretty easily, I'd say. Well, Nick, if we're going to be talking about music gear, the
Yeah.
place we've already talked in a past episode, not a couple weeks ago,
Much about the guitar.
about the old J Tercer that you used for years on stage. This magical guitar, which is light
Look at
as a feather
Can
and
you
stiff
hear
as
it?
a board. There you go. There goes those strings. That's all right. I'm going to change them tomorrow, anyways. When we first started playing shows, Nick played that guitar primarily. He played you played 2 shows with my Epiphone.studio,
Yeah.
which is
Nice.
super weird. But yeah, you used that J Tercer.
Sometimes
for,
we would bring it as a backup,
yeah.
and I played it at Dirty Rat Moto
Yeah.
on Major Street.
Yep. And at Bert's Tiki Lounge on May 17th of 2011. You also played it at Woodshed on June 10th of 2011. I remember all those early shows.
Damn.
What's going on with Bert's Tiki Lounge, Greg?
Greg Sherry?
Is that public?
Or no, different Greg. I don't know that is public.
Greg Hogan.
Yeah.
Greg Folk Hogan.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
We could do a whole episode about Greg. Because Greg has been the slinger of beverages at venues in Salt Lake
forever.
the entire time I've been 21,
Forever.
which I guess that only happened once, and it was almost 20 years ago.
So when the band first came together, what did those instruments look like?
So it's interesting that you want to talk about instruments today, because the way it began was Canyon and I had been in a number of bands together, and he showed up one day and he was like, we should start another band. I want to start another band. And I was like, so tired of everything we had done. Even though I was really proud of a lot of it, I was like, man, I don't want to do the same thing where I play guitar and you play like keyboard or bass. Like, I want to do something different. And he was like, didn't know what I meant and asked for clarification. And I was like, you know what I think we should do? You should get your dad's accordion and I will grab my mandolin and we'll figure out how to play them, but we'll start a punk band. And I thought that was the end of that endeavor. I thought that was as far as that was ever going to go.
Further.
And this was in like July of 2010. And like 3 days later, he showed up at my house with an accordion. And it was his dad's Iorio accordion. So it was an Iorio accordion that back in the 60s, they used to do this thing, a conversion on them. There was an organ conversion. So it was an accordion. And basically it had organ sounds built into it. And it was electric. You could actually like plug into it with this super weird like 10-pin thing that only organs used so that you could plug into like Leslie's from back in the day.
Okay.
So that was the beginning, and I was playing a mid-Missouri mandolin company, mandolin. That company later became, and now is, a company called Big Muddy Mandolins. But the old mid-Missouri stuff, in my opinion, was of higher quality. And that was it. Was just those two.
Is that the one that's tattooed on your arm?
Yeah, that's the tattoo that's on my forearm. My dad and my mom gave me that mandolin for my 18th birthday, and in hindsight, I was such a shit about it because like I was a typical 18-year-old punk rocker. Like, my dad and I had been butting heads for years at this point, and my dad was like into bluegrass and into like cowboy music and stuff. Not country, but cowboy music. He's a rock and roll guy. And when he gave me a mandolin for my birthday, my first thought, I never forget this, was, is this a gift for me or is this a gift for you? Like, and then he put me in mandolin lessons, and I was such a shithead that I was just like high on drugs when I was taking these mandolin lessons. And so I wasn't taking it seriously. I had no interest or intention in taking it seriously. And a few years later, Devil's Country asked me to join the band because I was pestering them because I thought they needed a lead guitar player. And they finally relented and said, like, yeah, we do agree. We need a lead instrument. Bring your mandolin. We can't wait to see what you come up with. And I had to figure out how to play the mandolin in like 3 days. But yeah, that was the mandolin that I used forever. The accordion that Canyon got from his dad, I mean, we had seen a million times. Larry would pull this out and play this accordion all the time. And especially during Swiss Days, which happens in Midway, where we grew up once a year, Labor Day weekend, he would dress up in lederhosen and put a fake mustache on and like walk around playing the accordion, playing these old accordion songs and like singing along with them. And Kenyon's mom had painted all these little flowers all over it. And yeah, we did a couple shows with it in the configuration that it was in, with that accordion configuration. And it was just a sound trap. Like, it just had these big can, like weird piezo transducer microphones that would just pick up anything. And so it was like, if he turned towards the drum kit, cymbals would come through the accordion. If he turned towards someone's amp, their instrument would come through the accordion. Like, it was just a nightmare. It was all feedback all the time. And at that time, with the pickup that I was using on my mandolin, it was an acoustic mandolin, so it still had a little bit of feedback issues. Mm-hmm. And then the pickup we were using on the banjo for both tenor and box was this little glue-on pickup that attached to the head of the banjo, which is a resonant head. So it was just like, I feel so bad for early sound guys that ran sound for us, because it was just like, 3 instruments that cannot have a stage volume, and they're the prominent instruments in the band. So like they have to hear each other. And man, it was a challenge.
It's tricky.
Yeah. It was a real challenge.
You got to know how to rein that in, and it gets out of control. And when the band doesn't mix itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you played that J tercer. In the beginning, our original bass player, Jared, played a J bass. And I gave him just an unending amount of shit for playing a J bass, because
all the like videos that he made that I've been learning the old songs with, it's all on his J bass.
Yeah. So I gave him nonstop shit for years until he got a P bass, and he got this P bass. This is like a 1970. I'd say it's late 70s, probably 76, 77.
Somewhere in there.
Black P bass with a maple neck, maple fingerboard. Beautiful. And he worked at the Guitar Center, and someone brought it in, traded it in. So he got it for super cheap, and he had it for years, and he loved it. But he fell in love with a new P bass and decided to sell the old one. And he sold it through my old work, Guitar Chimp. And we sold it to the bass player of Australian Pink Floyd.
Holy fuck, that's cool.
So when they came through town, we got tickets, and we took Jared, and when the bass player came out, he was playing that bass. And Jared was just like, oh my God, I shouldn't have sold it. And I was like, we told you not to sell it. The thing was so beautiful. And it was a good chuckle.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, but you know, that bass, it moved to a slightly more well-known band than this.
So everybody
one,
started out with like kind of acoustic instruments, a lot of acoustic instruments, and a lot of vocal mics. And we started playing, everybody would just have like a direct box.
Yeah.
And then we ran into trouble with hearing each other and with having enough places to plug things.
Yeah.
I think the first time we went to go play at a Bert's Tiki Lounge type scenario, they were like, I got
which instrument do you want?
5 channels that work total.
Yeah.
So we can do one vocal mic.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And so caveats had to be made. With the 6-piece band, it's a lot more channels than a lot of places are used to running.
Yeah.
So eventually we kind of all went to amplifiers.
Yeah.
You I think on the podcast have told the story previously about bringing the orange amp for recording.
Yeah.
But we were going to do a video after we recorded our first album, and we did this video in Salt Lake Recording Service, and which is also in that episode of Ghost Hunters.
Yeah.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that
you brought your
my 100-watt orange half stack.
Yeah.
As a joke, because we thought it would be funny to have like 100-watt orange half stack with a mandolin plugged into it, and it was funny, but also for all of us, we were like, that sounds a lot better than everything we've been doing with it.
Yeah,
so
it ripped.
So for like 5-6 years,
That was the thing.
easily, I had the smallest instrument and the biggest amp in the band.
Well, and it's a legendary brand and legendary guitar amp. So people would see that I've got a guitar around my shoulder, and they would come up to me to talk about it every single show. And I'd have to be like, no, that's my amp. Look down.
Yeah.
And
Oh man, that amp you had was so cool. Nick had this Blues Junior, right?
a DeVille,
Or was it a DeVille?
like a
Okay.
410.
Yeah. But he had
Tube amp,
reupholstered
Fender amp.
It was gorgeous.
Reupholstered in green paisley corduroy.
Oh, nice.
And then
like red faux snakeskin
for the grill cloth.
for the grill cloth.
Doesn't Jeff Dillon own that
Yeah.
now? Oh, man.
Yeah,
Jeff
he bought
Dillon.
it.
What a sweetheart.
When I got done with that one, I just traded him. We just did a circle for the amp that I was borrowing him, and then he bought that one.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I had that guitar amp and a pedal board that was easily 200
Oh my
pounds in
God.
the road case. With
That thing was enormous.
yeah, I mean, 4-cable method going back to the input and through to the input of the amp, all the like distortion pedals and anything that's like gain related would go, and then through the send and receive through the effects loop would go any modulation, any reverbs, any chorus effects, delays, things like that. And then I had a volume pedal, and then I had a foot switch, was the 4th cable, and that went back to a custom made box and then all of this stuff was in a looper, and not like a looper like I'm gonna record a loop, but a looper in the sense of it loops in each individual pedal in its own little loop, so that when a pedal is inactive, it's taken out of the circuit. So I had like this,
It was so
this
fancy.
controller that had MIDI going in and out to several pedals. It had the custom box that would control and switch the amp. So I got rid of the standard foot switch and had it switch with this pedal board, and it was all great. And I did have a bit of an issue when we played stages that were too small.
Yeah,
for
specifically
that
Green
pedal
Pig.
board.
I remember that being on the stage and
Yeah,
all of us just being
it's
like,
a little
oh,
too.
shit.
Anytime that we
nowhere
had to
to move.
squish in, it's just the pedal board was too wide.
Yeah.
And Molly Green's
Yeah.
up at Brighton,
Yeah.
and that karaoke bar place in Vegas. Where I had to put it off the front of the stage on a bunch of stuff and just step on it forward. But I had all the sounds that I wanted, and I was like, I hurt my back lifting the road case off of the 410, because there's no way
Yeah.
to hunch over and grab that one person and be in the right. It's just very awkward to be in the right position. You'd have to use like 2 people and like, and so it's just a time bomb waiting to pull a muscle.
Yeah.
And I yanked that the wrong way one time, and it got a little hung up and just took it out on my back. And I was like, this fucking sucks. Like, how can I downsize, and what can I do? And we talked about some of the musicians that tour that have a drawer of pedals. They just put all their pedals on the drawer, and then all you would have is the controller that I was using.
Yeah.
But then the problem with that is because each of those is looped in with an in and out cable and its own loop, that I'd have to have my own audio snake just to go in and out of all those pedals. It would be like 24 like plus wires. So that became a little improbable.
Yeah.
And Jared was just like, well, you could get a camper. I mean, that's what the pros do, though. I mean, but that would be really like kind of expensive. And I was like, well, how expensive? And he's like, I don't know, dude. They're like $3,000. And I was just like, bro,
Look at all this gear I
what I've
have.
got.
Yeah.
like,
If I sold all this,
I bought that,
I'd make money.
and then I sold off every piece of that pedal board, and I think I made $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't
Between
surprise
the
me.
amp and
You had so many cool pedals.
and the pedals
too.
and everything.
Oof.
But I sat down with this Kemper, and I went into the studio and
With Steve Phillips, right?
With Steve, because he had really dialed in the best sounding guitars that I'd had at this point. And this is, I don't know, what is this, like 8 years ago?
Yeah.
At this point, people were not like, there wasn't a general buy-in. You didn't see these rack amps everywhere. It's like it's in the guitar world. It's always country guys and metal guys that are pushing the envelope for the latest technology.
It's true.
They're always the ones that are kind of figuring other things out. And you know, a lot of guitar sounds are based off of tubes, you know.
Yeah.
And this type of circuitry that hasn't been made for general electronics in our homes and all those things for almost 100 years at this point. And well, anyways, Steve had really bought into this idea, so he was willing to take the time and dial in some sounds. And I was like, look, I have no ego about this. I don't care if we use stock stuff.
Yeah.
I don't care if we like tweak that. I don't care if we capture our own things. I don't care if we go on the internet and buy something that's rated really good or we like the sound of. I don't care what we do. So we took his Matchless and we set up like a mic and captured the sound of that and listened to that profile. And we're like, ooh, really good. But actually the Matchless that was already in the Kemper sounded better than the one that we got, even though it was like, you know, here's super nice mic, here's everything. It's just that one was just so perfectly dialed. So I think we ended up taking that Matchless sound and previous to the and like a Vox AC 30 or 15 sound for the cleans. And so, you know, up to this point I'd been doing all the Fender amps.
Yeah.
And I'd been using the Matchless a little bit, and I'd always used a Vox for doubles and things like that on all the amps. And Jared had some pretty sweet amps.
Yeah,
that we
that
had access
AC30
to.
that was red.
Yeah.
That was oh man, that thing
He'd
was
bring that in, and we
beautiful.
put the two of them side by side and mic them both up, and double or quadruple track all the guitars on the early records. And so, you know, we spent the equivalent of about 2 or 3 hours, made all those sounds, and then that was it. I mean, it was just, I'd go to play a show. It's one Ethernet cable.
Yeah.
I've got the amp back behind me. The amp unit itself weighs about 4 pounds.
And on top of that, like,
And it's just so consistent, and it sounds so good.
and no, it has no stage volume. That's
No
one of the
stage
things that I
volume.
think is
Yeah.
probably crazy for a lot of people is like, we don't have, drums are the only thing we have as stage volume.
Yeah.
And
So at that time, I'd bring my own speaker. I'd bring my own
little
powered
QSC,
speaker.
yeah.
And you know, there's a bunch of different options for digital amplifiers and amplifying them and making that comfortable, but it was always a push towards like no stage volume, and eventually we all just kind of went to pedals.
Yeah.
And a big
weird.
big catalyst of that was, and so full circle, we went DI, then we went amps, then we all went DI again the second we could hear ourselves.
Yeah.
And that all came with the in-ears.
Yeah. Being
And-
able to hear yourself is a game changer. And
And we get kind of quiet about it when other musicians are asking us about it, because it's like a fucking cult, dude.
yeah.
It's like once you're like, you know, people will constantly ask you about gear if you're in a band that has weird gear and prominent gear, and we've always had strange instrumentation, so that instrumentation is really pulled in people that don't just like maybe have a drum set or a guitar or whatever, but are like, oh, that's a mandolin, that's a banjo, like, and so we've always had like a musician fan base on a big level, because those are the people that really get like how strange it is to have a banjo and a mandolin leading this punk band.
Yeah.
And so we've always got people that are really interested in gear, and that's our friend group and everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's what drew me in a little bit. Like, I remember back in the day when I was first hearing about Folk Hogan, you guys were on I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Oh, yeah.
With
Chris Holfield.
Chris Holfield. Yeah.
You love Chris.
That was something that I listen to frequently, and I just remember you guys talking about, and this it kind of caught me by surprise, but I remember you and Cameron talking about like, well, first we had to learn how to play these instruments.
Yeah.
Because we're not, like Cameron's not a banjo player, or wasn't, and you weren't a mandolin player when you first started.
Nick's a vocalist.
Yeah.
You know?
And so like hearing that, I was like, oh damn, so these guys not only put in the work for this, but then they kind of had to just figure it out, you know?
Yeah. I mean, Jared
trial
was
and error
a
and-
jazz saxophonist and jazz guitarist.
Yeah.
Canyon was a keyboard player. I was a guitar player. Cameron was a guitar player. Like Nick was a vocalist.
Nobody was on their primary
Yeah, we
instrument
just
at
shuffled
that
so
point.
much. Drummers are the only ones that have been solid in this band.
But yeah, anyways, I didn't really finish that thought, but we get a little quiet about quiet about the in-ear thing because it's kind of a new thing. It's a lot of technology.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hassle. It's a lot of cost.
Yeah,
and it's just like a big change right now.
And it's also like such a foreign thing for anyone who's never dealt with it.
Yeah.
My good pal Matt Wiley of Die Shiny, we were having a conversation about ears, and he was like, "I hate ears; they're the worst." Really? Tried them for a little bit, and it was the worst thing ever. And I asked him everything that was wrong with it, and I was like, "Wait a minute, you guys have in-ears on stage, and the sound guy has control of your in-ears?"
Oh, that's the problem.
that like, what's the point? Like you just go get and like I quickly ran him through like, here's the mixer we use when we're in the States, but here's the mixer that we use when we're in Europe, and you could use this one because it's smaller and it will give you complete control over your own ears, and you can have anything you want. And like after I talked to him about it for like 5 minutes, he was like, oh, it can be so much better than it was. Like, okay, maybe I'll have to look at it. Because again, like when when I damaged my
Digital
voice,
mixers
they came,
catalysts. Yeah.
they told me at the Vocal Disorder Center, like, you need to get in-ear monitors. And so I brought it up to the band once, and I was like, because I didn't know anything about it, but Nick and Jared knew a lot about it. And years later, when we got them, now whenever I have that conversation with someone where they're like, oh, you guys use in-ears, what's that like? I always say the same thing. Like, I will never go back. Like, I will not go back. If I am singing in a band, there is absolutely no chance that I am ever going to do that without in-ear monitors, period. Yeah. Never again.
Well, the first thing that you notice within 5 minutes is just the clarity.
Yeah.
I mean, just the clarity.
Yeah, you're not hearing everything bounce off of every wall.
First show that I used them, I just had guitar going to the ears. And that was it. And I was hearing ambiently everything else.
Yeah.
And immediately, actually, I think Cameron had a set of them too, because I bought the 2-pack or whatever, and I was like, here, try this. And I hit the strings of my guitar, and I could tell the G string and the B string were out of tune.
Yeah.
Like, that's the level of clarity that I was hearing.
Yeah.
Over just, being right 4 feet away from my amp and hitting a chord, being like, yeah, that sounds good. It was just like, oh, okay, this is like the first time that you ever see saw like a television that was like in HD or something.
Yeah.
It was just, oh, okay, this is a totally different thing. And it's a secret fucking weapon for the band. It's making the band perform a lot better.
Yeah.
And the ability to dial in vocals and things like that. I mean, I just did a sound for a band last weekend that had as many vocalists on stage as Hulk Hogan has. Yeah. And it was very, very clear and apparent that they couldn't hear each other. Right. If they could hear themselves or something.
Yeah.
But
that's hard.
The mix
that makes
of
it a real hard time.
Yeah, it's super tricky.
Yeah,
super
I mean,
tricky.
it's since you brought in-ears into our lives, like, oh, dude, just the best thing ever. I love it so much.
Well, being
Yeah.
new to this, like to this band, like I've talked to a lot of musicians about like what kind of gear we use, and when I bring up in-ears, they're just kind of at first, it is kind of like oh, and then when I get to the part about well, like all of us can control our own mix,
Yeah.
and like that's been like the game changer for me as well is just being able to like mix my own ears in. If it doesn't sound good, it's my fault. It's not anybody else's.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have to spend a little
I always
time.
tell the band members that it's a Subway sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you get all the way to the end of the line and you don't like the sandwich, you fucking made it.
Yeah.
It's your fault. You
Yep.
made it, yeah.
You know?
And there have been shows where like we've sound checked and I've been like, everything sounds good in my ears. And then like when we go on stage,
Yeah.
everything's trash. And
it's
I'm like,
sometimes it
and
does
I'm
happen.
like, well,
Sometimes that happens.
I'm going to have to wait to a break until I fix this. So I'm
Sometimes
just going to
that
have to
happens.
listen to garbage for the next
But
45 minutes.
that really bad mix versus like
Oh,
a good
yeah.
mix on a good day with
mean,
monitors.
How many times
We're not even
yeah. Think
know.
about there are like specific bars that sound bad on stage just
Yeah.
because of the shape of the
room, the
and like,
resonance of the room, where the speakers are,
and like there's
what quality speakers,
there's
how much control.
entire venues that I would sacrifice
Yeah.
because of ears.
Yeah.
Like the idea of if I couldn't use ears in those venues, absolutely no way. Because it's just it's a night and day difference. It really is.
Yeah.
And like, you know, now it's weird because now I'm back down to using a DI. And I will probably not be using this one for very long. It does a lot of things well, but it does a number of other things not well. And I appreciate that.
Do you have
ears
access
gives me
to
that.
anywhere that carries JHS pedals? Do they carry them at Czar? Or
They
anywhere?
might. I'll have to ask.
I want you to try this DI that they make. It's basically
I usually don't support them because
You don't like them?
anti-LGBT.
really,
Yeah, they donate a lot of money to
Really?
anti-LGBT
Oh, man.
stuff.
really.
Why?
Yeah.
How can you be a music brand?
Seriously.
A Midwest music brand.
Still.
For fuck's sake,
Yeah.
that's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll find
That's
another
why
company.
Guitar Chip never carried him.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
But yeah, there's this DI has been great. I've been using the LR Bags DI. It's great, but there's a few things on it that are not great, and the tuner on it is useless.
You're like the fourth.
Useless.
You're like the fourth person that has complained about that tuner.
Oh, and it's good to hear that because there was a
should-
part of me that was like, because of my job, I stare at a strobe tuner all day, and like maybe I'm just like too used to what a strobe tuner is capable of.
Michelle got
No,
one and hated the
terrible.
tuner.
Yeah, the tuner's awful.
I'm trying to think. I don't know. Yeah.
Does your Line 6 wireless?
that's
does it
that's
have
the
a tuner
wireless
in it?
system. No,
No.
my like I could go down to the baby Kemper.
yeah,
Because so what's happened is like all these digital heads came out, and then that evolved into like kind of putting them back in racks, which was a very like 80s thing to do, is have
Yeah.
like a big rack. But then all of the different brands that are competing all have like a small form factor one now.
yeah,
And now it's to the point where the 4 or 5 like Chinese brands that are pretty prominent, you can find them at like a lot of music stores, a lot of online retailers, the big websites and stuff. They now all have some version of a multi-effects like profiler, not
Profiler,
multi-effects,
yeah.
a profiler
yeah.
that loads in the different amp modules, the IRs, the different formats of those like digital amps. And those are all in the like $70 range now.
That's crazy.
So it's gone from like, this used to be like a $2,000 or $3,000 piece of gear to like, okay, there's all these companies that are are doing that level, and then they're doing a floor modeler, and then they're also doing a mini floor modeler. And so here's the $2,000 version, here's the $800 version. But and then this is interesting too, because this is something that's been around for years and years and years, and it hadn't really made the path back to the mainstream. But I've been watching reviews of some of the guitar brands that have all of that built into the body of the guitar.
Yeah. Yep.
And I just watched this like YouTube series. The guy's got like 3 of these, and all he has is a 4-button Bluetooth foot switch. It's battery powered, and that controls the sounds in the guitar. And you create all those sounds before the show, and you can have, like 100 different sounds and bank up and down, and the tuner and everything is all this little form factor. So when he tours, when he gigs and he's playing these festival stages and tiny pubs and all this stuff, and sometimes like, he's having to run his own sound. Sometimes there's a sound team, and everywhere in between, it's just a guitar and a case and like that thing in the pocket. And it's like, they're like, the guitars are like $900 new right now.
Yeah.
That do that. And they're beautiful looking guitars.
Wow.
And I'm like, man, kind of thinking about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you imagine just cool. We're in Europe. Here's my rig.
Yeah.
It's the instrument.
I think about that a lot. The pickups that are in the mandolins that I build are active.
Yeah.
So I could get away with not using a DI. I could plug directly into a snake.
Sure.
And so
sure,
it's
absolutely.
like, well, I could just bring my strobe tuner and my wireless and like the pedals that I need.
I
could do that.
I had a kind of an unusual acoustic setup, and it was, this is another one of those, like, people would ask me about it, and I'd be like, oh, man, I don't want to have this circular conversation about how everybody else is doing something else different to get to the same point.
Yeah.
It's a little weird, but I had that LR Bags Anthem pickup that's a mixture of a microphone and why can't I say this word? Piezo. Moses will help. Piezo.
That's right.
So it's a mixture of an acoustic guitar pickup and an actual microphone in the body, and you blend it. And then I just went direct with that. I didn't even use a DI box. I literally just used a cable that had XLR on one side and the 1/4 inch on the other. And then I threw some compression, I threw some EQ, and I threw a little bit of reverb and the slightest, most unnoticeable amount of delay. And I just shaped that and dialed that in. And people would just be like, what box are you running? What are you doing to make that guitar sound like that? I'm like, first of all, the guitar sounds like that. So it's just about getting that sound out there and amplified,
Yeah.
So
there'll
always be another thing. There'll always be technology.
Yeah. Anyone in bands is aware of like how nerdy we all get about like our tone and the things we like and the things we don't like. And, I appreciate, there's a million things that I appreciate about this band having been around as long as we are. But one of them is the fact that like every one of us has gone completely around the entire spectrum of like, this is what I like. Now I don't like that anymore. Now I like it again because like we've been around long enough that, technology has changed and what we like has changed. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that none of us have been stuck in a rut.
All of my distortions are really overdrives. They're really quite thin.
Yeah.
And now after recording this album with super, super stacked high gain and like big humbucker grandpa guitars and big sounds, then I go play and I'm like, this is very thin.
Yeah.
But it's nice for a live mix because it sits in its place.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I watched this dude that there's one Sunday night when I was working at the garage or Saturday or whenever, and their engineer was touring with them and mixed the band. And it was acoustic guitar, bass, drums, and lead guitar. And the way that he mixed that show is so fascinating to me because I literally just like showed up and I was like setting up mics and he's like, oh, yeah, I don't know you, but I'm so-and-so and I'm here to mix the band and I tour with them. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know, what can I do to facilitate that? And he's like looking around and he's like, and he just starts telling the bandmates, like, go get this microphone out of the car and set this up here and there and there. And like, I just kind of show him where everything's at, where everything's set. And the way that he mixed that band was so fascinating to me because the lead singer, she was playing an acoustic guitar and it was just like a kind of sound in the mix. I mean, it was so buried.
Not present. Yeah.
It was so buried and it was just a sense, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, I'm used to touring with an acoustic guitar where that's like the primary sound and I'm dialing that way down, way in and not down, but way up and getting that right where I want it. Well, yeah, we've done a lot of crazy stuff.
I mean, there's been some crazy one-offs. So I feel like we should mention after a few years of running that accordion as an accordion, we took it over to Accordions International, which is in Salt Lake City. If you're unaware, it's an amazing store that's right behind the largest Costco in America, the Costco that's on 3rd West, downtown in Salt Lake. If you go to like the northwest corner of the parking lot, you'll see a building that says Accordions International. And Paul Pasquale is the guy that has owned that for decades. And it's an incredible store. And if you're into accordions or you just want to see something cool, go check that place out. It rules. Oh, yeah. So we went there and they tore out the accordion section and installed these strips of condenser mics inside of the accordion that were these little mini Sennheiser condenser mics. And they cut down on the noise, but they still had feedback issues. And we used that for a number of years.
Yeah.
And then finally, we bit the bullet and spent the several $1,000s to buy a Roland MIDI accordion.
Which is such an awesome instrument.
Was instantly the best decision we had ever made. Because not only... So when Canyon started playing the accordion in the band, that original accordion was 34 pounds.
Holy shit.
And he was jumping around on stage with that thing on his back. And then when we tore it out and put that Sennheiser system in, it ended up at like 22 pounds, something like that. It ended up losing just over 10 pounds. And then when we got the new accordion, it was still heavy, but it was like 16, 17 pounds. So it was like, okay, we're in like a usable ballpark. So it was almost half the weight of his previous accordion.
Dude, coolest guitar I've seen in person in a hot minute last Saturday. Guitarist showed up with a white Relish guitar. Or I'm not sure, the Relish?
Relic?
Relic?
Yeah.
Relish?
Yeah.
Relish? Why did I say Relish?
Because it's close
Because you want
enough.
a hot dog?
I want a hot dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, Relish guitars. They're made in Sweden.
Relish? I literally
Sweden.
work on guitars
No,
for
the
a
other.
living.
What's the other S place that we went where everything's really expensive? Switzerland.
Oh, Switzerland.
They're a Swiss-made electric guitar, and the whole back cavity pops off with magnets, and then you can pop off the pickups and pop in new ones. So he had it, and it had like four. He had like 4 sets of pickups and then the 5-way switch is like a touch sensitive like slider that was like illuminated with an LED.
Dude, that's nuts.
It was a crazy guitar.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole back piece, but it was like kind of a faux wood because the actual guitar body is all aluminum.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're pretty much hollow.
And I mean, so this thing was just weird and beautiful. I wanted
They're
one.
wacky. Since we just haven't mentioned it at all, I feel like it's worth mentioning that Seb plays a Mapex Saturn. Is it a Saturn or a Jupiter? Oh, I'd be so disappointed. Well, maybe he should show up for the podcast.
Come record podcast.
Friggin' Seb.
It's a drum.
It's drums. They sound nice.
It's a beautiful drum.
It's a
Well,
really nice.
I think we're there, man.
Well, thanks for listening to us nerd out. This is what we do all the time. It's just
Thanks for
nerd out.
educating me because I'm so
Casey
old.
plays a Dimension bass, a Fender Dimension
I
bass.
do play with a
It's sick.
dark glass Alpha Omega.
Yeah.
Which sounds really good.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Beautiful, beautiful
And
sound.
Ernie Ball Volume Junior.
Yes.
I also have one of those. I love that pedal.
Cameron
does its
has
job.
like 52 banjos.
He does. He does. And it's interesting. When we recorded our EP a couple of years ago, or last year, he like showed up with a bunch of banjos and he was like, oh, I think everyone's gonna like this banjo, and like played it, and we were all like, yeah, that sounds really like a banjo. And then he pulled out his other top tension and played it for us, and we were all just like, holy shit, that sounds incredible.
Hell yeah.
And so that's what we've been making him play for the last album and everything. So, but he's used a bunch of different banjos. He's got so many banjos. But yeah, I play a flying V mandolin that I made myself, if you didn't already know. And if you come to that fancy old album release show, you'll see my new mandolin.
Oh.
It's so cool.
It's even cooler.
We'll buy tickets for the show
Yeah, folkhogan.com.
and come to the show and buy an album if you can't, or if you can.
Yeah.
If you fit into any category of those options,
yes
buy
or
the
no.
album,
Yeah.
listen to it, and tell us what you think. All you can buy
At folkhogan.com.
at folkhogan.com.
Yeah. Casey, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I need to come
Good
to more
night.
of these.
Chips, thanks for being here. Don't
You're
forget
so-
to come to the shows, and Cameron will give you a kiss on your tummy like this.
Staying up all night.
Bye.